Before highways carved through the mountains, before chain diners and gas stations dotted the hills, there was supper, simple, smoky, and served under the hum of kerosene light. The people who lived in those hills didn't have much, but what they had, they made last. Their kitchens were built from dirt floors and hard lessons, from patched roofs and cast iron skillets blackened by generations of use. The air smelled of hickory smoke, cornmeal, and lard, the scent of survival wrapped in comfort. These were the meals that fed miners and moonshiners, mothers and mountaineers. Humble dinners that never made the cookbooks, but built the backbone of Appalachia. Tonight we're remembering 20 forgotten hillbilly dinners, the ones born from hunger, love, and stubborn pride. 1. Poke salad and fatback. Not salad, salad. A word as old and earthy as the people who spoke it. Pokeweed grew wild on the edges of the hollers, tall and purple-stemmed, beautiful but deadly if you didn't know its ways. Hill women did. They'd pick it young, only the tender shoots, boil it 3 times in fresh water to chase out the poison, and then fry it up with fatback until the greens turned glossy and rich. The pan would sizzle, and the air would fill with the smoky perfume of salt pork and wild leaves. It was the hillbilly spinach, bitter, smoky, and alive with the taste of summer survival. Old-timers said poke salad could put the fight back in a tired man. It wasn't just food, it was folklore, medicine, and defiance. A reminder that even the dangerous could be tamed if you had patience, knowledge, and a cast iron skillet. 2. Soup beans and cornbread. The meal that never failed and never judged. Every pot started the same. A handful of dried pinto beans, a slab of salt pork, and time. Slow, patient time. The beans simmered all day, their skins softening, their broth thickening to the color of river clay. The smell crept through cracks in the cabin walls and drifted down the dirt road, calling home anyone within sense reach. Beside it, in a smoking skillet, cornbread baked golden, crisp on the bottom, tender on top, each slice holding the warmth of the fire. This was the dinner that saw families through winters, floods, and heartbreaks. There were no kings or beggars at a bean supper, only equals, bound by hunger and gratitude. The spoon scraped the last of the beans from the pot, and silence settled, broken only by the crackle of the fire, the pure sound of contentment. 3. Fried taters and onions. Every hill kitchen had a skillet, and in it, this simple miracle, the song of grease, potato, and thyme. Potatoes were sliced thin by calloused hands, onions chopped rough, all tossed into sizzling bacon fat until the edges crisped and curled. The air filled with the rich scent of smoke and salt, and for a moment, the whole house felt warmer. There wasn't a soul in the Appalachians who didn't grow up on fried taters. They were breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a comfort that never asked for more than what was on hand. Sometimes they'd be served beside fried eggs or beans, other times alone, the grease soaking into a chipped plate. Cheap, hot, and honest, they tasted like the sound of rain on a tin roof, steady, soothing, and endlessly familiar. Every golden slice was a memory of mothers humming, fires crackling, and life kept simple but full. 4. Squirrel stew. When the pantry was bare and the woods were kind, squirrel went into the pot. It was lean, gamey, and plentiful, the meat of the people who couldn't afford to waste a bullet on deer. Young boys learned early how to skin one clean, how to stretch the hide and use every piece. The stew began with browned meat, carrots, onions, and whatever vegetables were handy, sometimes even dumplings, thick and chewy, floating in broth like small clouds. The scent was wild and earthy, like autumn leaves and wood smoke after rain. When it simmered long enough, the meat fell clean off the bone, melting into the broth, rich and humble. It wasn't a delicacy. It was a declaration that no man or woman in those hills would starve while the woods still whispered. For some, it was supper. For others, it was survival in its truest, most honest form. 5. Hoe cakes. Born of necessity and clever hands. The name came from the tool, a flat hoe blade held over the fire, where the batter of cornmeal, salt, and water sizzled into life. That's how a field hand cooked when there wasn't a kitchen for miles. Later, it found its way into every cabin and saloon, the sound of batter hissing in grease becoming a melody of its own. Some added sugar, others swore that made it city food. Hot from the pan, brushed with butter, or drizzled with sorghum syrup, hoe cakes could make even the poorest table feel rich. The edges crisped golden, the center stayed soft, one bite of home no matter how far you'd wandered. They were breakfast, lunch, or dessert depending on what you could spare. But in every bite was the same thing: pride. In making something from nothing, in feeding a family with fire, flour, and faith. 6. Leather breeches. Beans that told time. In summer, green beans were strung with needle and thread, hung like garlands across porches, and left to dry under the mountain sun. They wrinkled, darkened, and hardened, taking on the look of worn leather, and that's how they got their name. Come winter, when snow sealed the hollers and gardens lay sleeping, those beans came down from the rafters and found new life in a boiling pot with ham hock and salt. The water turned brown, the beans plumped up, and the smell of smoke and meat filled the house. Leather breeches weren't fancy, but they were powerful, the taste of patience, planning, and preservation. Every bite carried the memory of summer sunlight and the sound of cicadas. They were proof that mountain people didn't just survive the seasons, they outsmarted them, stringing up their hope one bean at a time. 7. Possum and sweet potatoes. When meat was scarce and winter pressed hard against the hollers, folks didn't have the luxury of turning up their noses at supper. Out there, food wasn't a choice. It was a matter of wit and will. That's when the possum made its humble debut on the Appalachian table. The same creature that scurried through the woods and rifled through garden patches by night became a lifeline by morning. The old-timers knew the trick. You didn't cook it right away. You penned it, fed it milk or cornmeal for a few days to clean it out, then scalded, scraped, and roasted it whole beside sweet potatoes slicked in lard. As it baked, the cabin filled with a smell thick and sweet, part pork, part sugar, all hunger. The fat dripped golden, the potatoes caramelized, and supper became a kind of holy ritual. Some called it poor man's pork, others called it sin. But the truth was simpler. It was survival made tender by fire and faith. Nothing wasted, nothing left behind, not even the critters that crossed your porch. 8. Fried corn pone. Not baked, fried. Thick patties of cornmeal batter dropped into sizzling lard until they hissed and popped, the kitchen filling with a sound like rain on a tin roof. The edges browned fast, curling slightly, while the center stayed soft and warm. When done right, they came out golden and crisp, with a texture that spoke of fire and patience. Folks ate them plain or dunked them into soup beans, letting the crust soak up the smoky broth until it softened and melted on the tongue. Fried corn pone was humble glory, the kind of food that never asked for thanks but always earned it. Each bite carried the warmth of firelight, the memory of cracked hands stirring batter after a long day in the fields. It wasn't fancy, but it was faithful, the kind of dinner that made you forget what you didn't have and remember what you did. 9. Cabbage and salt pork boiled in one pot until tender and smoky. This was the dinner of miners, mill hands, and men too tired to talk. The cabbage wilted soft under the lid, soaking up the salt and fat of the pork that simmered beside it. When the pot was uncovered, the steam rose thick and fragrant, smoky, briny, and a little sweet. It filled empty bellies, thawed frozen bones, and quieted the day's troubles in one hot bowl. Folks didn't call it fancy, they called it enough. Sometimes, if luck allowed, a potato or two joined the mix, thickening the broth and making it stretch a little farther. Served with cornbread, it became more than a meal. It was medicine for the weary. In those hills, cabbage and salt pork taught a truth no cookbook ever could. You don't need riches to eat like a king, only a pot, patience, and hunger. 10 chicken and dumplings. On Sundays, when the Lord was thanked and the week's work done, there came chicken and dumplings, the holy meal of the hill folk. A hen too tough for frying was perfect for the pot, stewed slow until the broth turned golden and the air smelled like grace itself. Flour and lard became dumplings, soft and heavy as clouds, dropped into the bubbling broth where they swelled and soaked up the flavor of the chicken. Families gathered around wooden tables worn smooth by time, heads bowed, spoons ready. The first taste was pure comfort, warm, rich, and kind. It wasn't just supper, it was peace, served by hand. No one left hungry, and no one left ungrateful. After all, this was a dish that reminded even the poorest family that blessings didn't come from gold or glory. They came from broth, bread, and the love that stirred them together. 11. Fried green tomatoes. Before they ripened, the best ones were plucked straight from the vine, firm, tart, and green as new summer. They were sliced thick, dredged in cornmeal, and fried until the oil sang. The crust turned golden, crisp, and delicate, the flesh inside softening just enough to melt on the bite. Each slice popped and crackled in the skillet, filling the room with the smell of salt, smoke, and sunshine. Fried green tomatoes were more than a side. They were summer's last stand. Served hot, they were eaten plain, or stacked between slices of white bread with a smear of mayonnaise and a dash of pepper. Tangy inside, crunchy outside, they lingered, like a memory of long afternoons and front porch laughter. The taste was simple but unforgettable, the kind that made you close your eyes and remember when life was slower and every meal came from your own backyard. 12. Pinto bean pie. Waste not, that was the rule. When sugar was scarce and money scarcer, some clever soul mashed leftover pinto beans, mixed them with molasses, sugar, and a whisper of cinnamon, and baked the lot in a pie crust. What came out was a miracle of mountain ingenuity, soft, sweet, and tasting so close to pumpkin pie that most folks never knew the truth until the dish was gone. It became a favorite at church suppers and winter tables, proof that hard times could still taste sweet. The texture was creamy, the flavor deep and spiced, the scent filling the cabin with warmth and surprise. You wouldn't tell the secret until the last bite, and by then, no one cared. It was too good to question. Pinto bean pie was more than dessert. It was a reminder that poverty can't starve creativity, and that even beans can taste like blessings. 13. Fried apple hand pies. Leftover apples, sugar, and dough, folded into half moons and fried crisp in hot lard until the kitchen smelled like heaven. The crust blistered golden, the filling bubbled sweet, and the sound of that sizzling oil was music after a hard day's work. These pies were made to travel. Breakfast for the miner, lunch for the logger, dessert for the children too restless to wait. The smell of cinnamon and grease hung in the air like comfort you could carry in your pocket. Some were dusted with sugar, others were left plain, their sweetness enough on its own. Biting into one was like biting into the memory of fall, the taste of orchards, wood smoke, and cold mornings softened by warmth. They were small, simple, and perfect. Proof that a good cook didn't need much, only fire, flour, and love enough to turn scraps into something worth remembering. 14. Corn and tomato chowder. A summer supper of corn cut fresh from the cob, kernels still warm from the sun, stewed with garden tomatoes, onions, and a splash of cream, if you had it. The mix simmered in a black pot that never left the stove, the smell rising soft and sweet, like sunlight turning to steam. Each spoonful was a portrait of the season, golden corn sweet as memory, tomato tang bright as laughter. Sometimes a handful of crispy bacon or a pat of butter would melt in, making it richer than any feast. Served with cornbread or saltine crackers, it tasted like the fields themselves, fleeting, golden, and alive. In every bite was the whisper of summer, barefoot children, buzzing cicadas, and the promise of harvest. When the first chill of autumn crept down the mountain, that chowder reminded folks that warmth wasn't just in the fire, it was in the food. 15. Hog jowl and black-eyed peas. New Year's dinner in the hills, for luck, for health, for hope. The hog jowl sizzled slow in a cast-iron skillet, fat rendering into a smoky perfume that filled the cabin before sunrise. Beside it, a pot of black-eyed peas simmered with salt, onion, and faith. One pea for every day of the year, each bite a wish for better times. Some said the peas brought luck, others said they brought humility, a reminder of lean years gone by. When the two came together on a plate, the peas soaked up the grease and smoke from the pork, turning humble beans into something near holy. Families would eat in quiet reverence, passing plates and promises. The taste was simple but symbolic, a ritual older than the road that led to the porch. In the Appalachians, hope wasn't spoken, it was eaten. One bite, 1 year, one blessing at a time. 16. Buttermilk fried rabbit. Crisp, tender, and wild. Rabbit was the meat of the self-reliant. Soaked overnight in cold buttermilk, dredged in seasoned flour, then dropped into a skillet of hot lard until it turned golden and crisp. The sound was its own kind of music. A pop, a hiss, a sigh, and the smell that followed could make a man forget his troubles. The crunch of the crust gave way to soft, delicate meat, lean and sweet from a life spent in the wild. Paired with biscuits and sawmill gravy, it was the mountain man's Sunday best, the reward after weeks of work and weather. Some served it with fried apples or greens, others just a flask of moonshine and gratitude. It wasn't just a meal, it was mastery over the land itself. To catch it, clean it, and cook it right was proof you belonged to the hills and the hills belonged to you. 17. Chow chow. Not a meal, but a must-have. The color and kick that saved many a dull dinner. A bright relish of cabbage, green tomatoes, onions, and peppers, chopped fine and simmered in vinegar with mustard seed and sugar until it glowed like bottled sunshine. The pop of the mason jar lid was the music of preservation, each jar a little treasure tucked away for winter. Spoon it over beans, pile it beside fried pork, or stir it into cornbread crumbs. It woke everything up. Sharp, sweet, tangy, and alive. Chow chow brought summer's heat to January tables. Families passed their recipes like heirlooms. No two jars ever quite the same, but all made with care. It wasn't just a condiment. It was culture, proof that even the simplest food could sing if it had the right companion. Every bite was a reminder. Mountain folks didn't waste flavor, they saved it. 18. Collard greens and corn liquor. Simmered low with ham hocks until the leaves turned silky and rich. Collard greens were the soul of the southern hills. The smell filled the cabin, earthy and deep, curling through open windows and mingling with the sharp bite of homemade corn liquor poured to chase it down. The two belonged together, one for the soul, one for the courage. The greens cooked for hours, darkening in broth thick with smoke and salt. A splash of vinegar near the end made the flavor sing, cutting through the fat and waking the tongue. Old men said it kept your blood strong. Young men just knew it filled your stomach. Served with cornbread, it was both medicine and miracle. And when the moonshine burned warm in the chest, the meal was complete. Greens for the body, liquor for the heart, and laughter for the long road ahead. 19. Cathead biscuits and sawmill gravy. Named for their size, not their ingredients. Biscuits big as a cat's head, soft and flaky, smothered in creamy white gravy made from sausage drippings. It was the taste of comfort, heavy and warm, the kind that made you forget the cold outside. 20. Blackberry cobbler. When summer rolled in and the brambles bent heavy with fruit, it was time for cobbler. Berries mixed with sugar, topped with dough, baked until bubbling and brown. Served hot, maybe with a splash of cream, it was joy in a tin pan. Wild, messy, and sweet as redemption. The Hillbilly kitchen wasn't built on recipes. It was built on resilience. Every dish was a story of what could be made from almost nothing: cornmeal, salt, and hope. These suppers weren't meant to impress. They were meant to endure. They filled bellies, warmed hearts, and turned hard times into something almost holy. Because in those mountains, food wasn't just fuel. It was family, faith, and the proof that even in the poorest places, life still found its flavor. And though the world's moved on, the highways paved, the shacks gone quiet, somewhere a cast iron skillet still sizzles, and the ghosts of those old dinners still hum through the smoke.